We'll just keep it on the graphic or whatever. So there we go. All right. Well,
welcome.
What are we doing? What are we doing
Good evening.
Here? What are we doing? All right.
We're a little scattered tonight because the studio has had quite the cosmetic transformation
That
in the last few days.
is true. And let me give you an example. Let me just walk back here. So before, we could never do a shot this wide. Yes, I'm barefoot. Take it easy.
You know.
Take it easy. We could never do a shot this wide because this whole floor was just, concrete. It was all stained up. So we put carpet in and got a new backdrop. And now we can walk around like this. Does this make you nervous?
Yeah.
If we were doing a debate, I would come up
bit.
behind you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we've been working hard this week. We've got GES coming to the studio.
Yes.
I guess you know that.
Sean Lazar and Bob Wilkin.
And we're going to shoot some videos. Bob is an overachiever, as you guys might know. He wants to do like 45 videos in one day, so we'll see if we can get it done, but it'll be good. They really can churn them out, so I think we might be able to. If you hear kind of a funny sound, it's raining a little bit here, but kind of intermittently, so we'll just let it be. We let it be. Okay, what are we going to do tonight?
I think we're going to do something Christmas related tonight. Take a break from salvation and discipleship.
Yes, although we're always living the truths in salvation and
That's
discipleship.
true. Take a break from going through the book.
Yeah, so Jeremy had a great idea. I'm so scattered I didn't put up our screen that has our comments. So we think we're broadcasting. I don't really know, but I guess we are. But Jeremy had this good idea that once we finish salvation discipleship, that we, and since we're streaming a sermon video on Sunday mornings, that maybe what we could do is just ask that folks watch the Sunday morning video and then we discuss it. We discuss it on Sunday night.
It's a great idea.
So I like that. Now, I think we will probably still finish salvation discipleship in coming weeks, but since it's kind of coming down to Christmas, thought it'd be kind of interesting to try that out, see what we think. And by the way, thank you, Jeremy. It's a good idea. Now, I had a question for you. Okay. You had a good idea about the Christmas idea.
Oh, well, I know a lot of people, I'm trying to pull up your comments here so we can see what's going on, but I deleted the Facebook app, so it's a little, anyway.
You talk to them.
I'll focus on you. Yes, so I know a lot of people go to Christmas Eve services traditionally and will not be doing that this year. So I thought maybe we could do our own Christmas Eve service here online. And we have a really cool kids show that we can do for it that has already been written. And so we'll have some puppets, a puppet show for the kids. We'll sing some Christmas carols together and maybe do some other things for adults as well. So it'll be a family-friendly thing, something for everybody in it, and we'll do that
when will that happen?
On Christmas Eve.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Unless you say you'd rather it be the Sunday before Christmas and not do it on Christmas Eve. But I thought it might be fun to do just a short little thing. So
I like that idea. So I'm getting something.
I think he gave up on my phone.
Oh, I'm just nearly. I don't know if that'll work or not, but we'll try that. Yeah, I was trying to get your comments up because it just isn't the same to not have your comments. Well, that one doesn't work. We
got to get it together before tomorrow morning.
I was on a ladder. Just a few moments ago, I was on a ladder, hanging that backdrop, and I said, "What time is it?" And you said 4:30, and I said, "Oh." And then I continued to work on that. So anyway, hopefully you guys are interacting with us, although we have no idea, kind of flying blind. But I'll tell you what, this morning, if you guys watched the sermon video this morning, I left in a kind of a question answer time at the end, and people had great questions. And it was really exciting because I could tell there was a lot of new ideas in the room and a lot of things that people hadn't really, thought through before or heard before. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of, now, I would love for you to go and watch the sermon video, but I thought we could kind of talk about that tonight. Did I cut in to what you were saying, or were you
No, I was
finished? Okay,
done.
I'm sorry. When I'm in utility mode, I'm not listening, even though it looks like I'm listening. We're going like this.
Oh, really? I've never noticed that before.
Yeah. So because I'm trying to sort out problems. Okay. So Christmas, according to the prophets. So the concept here is that for a long time, people were looking forward to Christmas, but not in the way that we think of Christmas. So like who would have been looking for, now they were looking forward to the Christ and his arrival, and that's, basically, for us that's Christmas. So but like what kind of, just I'm going to quiz you here. What people would have been looking forward to Christmas before it happened?
Prophets.
What? Right here, prophets, according to the prophets. Prophets, and I would say those who listen to the prophets,
Yes.
right? So, are you pulling up Restream?
It just, occurred
That'll
to me
work.
that that's
Yeah,
where the
that'll work.
comments are, not directly on
So,
Facebook.
tell us a little bit about this sermon that you preached this morning.
He knows I didn't even watch it. I'm sorry, dear.
Well, I'm okay with that. Oh man, this is not working right. Why am I signed for? So the sermon this morning was the login is what I want. That's what I want. We are
It's my face.
okay. Watch this. Watch. It's technological magic.
didn't
What
work.
is that password? Tell them what you think Christmas according to the prophets would be about. If you were given that title, I need like 30 seconds
Okay.
to do this. If you were given that title, what would that sermon series be about?
Probably go through the prophets who foretold Jesus' coming, the birth of,
You're saying there's
The
prophets
Messiah.
that foretold his coming?
yes. God spoke to people. This is terrible.
You can do it,
I'm
dear.
sorry.
You can do it.
Good at
This
stalling
isn't
for
working.
time.
Nothing's
Okay.
working tonight. We're not going to talk to you guys other than through the camera. Sorry about that, but we won't also know that you're talking to us in spirit. So
I feel bad.
I don't feel bad. We're trying to get things, worked out. So Christmas according to the prophets. Here's what we're going to do. This is really the second one. It's my favorite so far because of a couple of things that you'll probably, maybe you know already, but I think it surprised some people this morning.
Okay.
So these are the ones we looked at. I doubt we'll look at all these because
That's a lot.
it's just a whole bunch. But in a couple of these, there's this really unique thing. And this morning I talked a bit about the idea that one part of the Christmas present that God is giving to the world and hasn't completely been given yet is government. Right? Now, I don't mean the current government. I don't mean any past government. What I mean is the future government of the kingdom, of course. And so, a lot of times, I told them about how I give you presents, but I don't always give you the present on the day. It's like I let you know a present's coming.
You are like way overachiever this year.
Well, wait till you see the present. I mean,
Well, it came way before Christmas.
it
That's
did.
what I mean.
But often, I'll tell you there's a present coming, and then it won't come all at once, or it might come
Yeah.
in pieces, or it may come way late. In a sense, the present that we get for Christmas from the Lord came in multiple parts. I mean, Jesus was a great present, saved us from our sins, gave us salvation, but there's still more to come. And so, more to come meaning government. And this morning in the video, we talked a lot about how every government has huge problems. Even the best types of government we've ever figured out have huge types of problems, no matter how good they are. So you can watch the video to kind of get into that discussion. But here is the first verse. Why don't you read this for us?
I will gather the remnant of my flock from all the lands where I have banished them, and I will return them to their grazing land. They will become fruitful and numerous. I will raise up shepherds over them who will tend them. They will no longer be afraid or discouraged, nor will any be missing. This is the Lord's declaration.
Now, this morning I asked the congregation, because I thought they probably could relate to this, have you ever been afraid or discouraged from the leadership in the government, whether it's local, in your educational institution, your national government, whatever, have they ever produced in you some afraidness, also known as fear or discouragement? I'd say, man, that happens every
after
every 2
2020
years.
especially that anybody can answer
Yeah.
that question
We have no
with
fear.
a no.
I mean, you might say, I have no fear because I trust the Lord, but generally speaking, you know, government kind of it majors on this. Now, they do some things that are valuable, of course, but in the government, there's lots of this. And so notice what it says, that he'll raise up shepherds. It's a leader, right? He'll raise up a leadership, and that this leadership is not, so we're talking about in the future kingdom of heaven, by the way, on earth, that these shepherds will not produce fear and discouragement. And notice, you might say, well, who would be qualified for such a high office?
They will serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up for them.
What? You saying that King David is going to be raised up, resurrected would be another word for that, resurrected to actually be a leader of the people? Now, in this context, specifically, we're talking about Israel, right? And so in Israel, in the future kingdom of heaven, David is going to be their shepherd. He's going to be their shepherd king, their shepherd prince is another word for it. And this isn't the only place we see this. Actually, in Ezekiel, talks about it. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. I like this because it's like I said it, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like it's not a maybe, it's a for sure thing. So in the future kingdom of heaven, David is going to be part of the government. And by the way, David was a good king. He was chasing after the heart of God, and he had some problems.
He had some setbacks.
But he was a great. He was a prophet. He was he cared what God. What direction God wanted to take the nation. Mm-hmm. So that's not the only place. My servant David will be king over them, and there will be one shepherd for all of them. Now this is interesting to me. He says David, in the previous Jeremiah, it says shepherds, plural. Here he said there will be one shepherd. So the way I see this is, you've got the King of Kings, who's a type of shepherd. Then you got David, who's a prince under the King of Kings, shepherd. And but it's interesting, it says there will be one shepherd for all of them, which to me is saying it all points the King of Kings, that great shepherd. But there's these other shepherds in there. Another one that we talked about this morning, I don't have a slide for it, is in Matthew 19, I believe it is, where Jesus says that the 12 apostles will sit on 12 thrones and judge the tribes of Israel. So what we have King of Kings, Jesus. We've got David, the prince. We've got the 12 the 12 judges, which will be the apostles minus Judas plus Mattathias. It's for another time, but it'd be the 12 apostles. And then maybe other shepherds of some kind, which we don't know a whole lot about. There's some evidence, but we don't know a whole lot about what those other shepherds in between there will be. But some of the parables kind of give us an indication that some will manage like maybe 5 cities, some will manage 10 cities. And then we got the people. So this concept really surprised some people this morning. Now, I think you've probably heard this before, mm-hmm. but my impression is most people don't realize this, that in the kingdom of heaven, it's not about sitting on a cloud and strumming a heavenly harp. It's going to be a very practical kingdom. It's going to be here on earth, I assume there's some sort of commune between, or maybe we could say a commute between maybe heaven and earth. I don't know how that works, but there's probably other activity other than just what's happening on the earth. But it's going to be a practical kingdom with a practical government, with resurrected David, resurrected apostles, resurrected you, and resurrected me, and all of us, if you're a believer, as part of that. Mm. And so to me, that's such a cool thought of all those specifics that are used in Scripture. So how does that strike you? Because I need to drink water.
A lot of hope as well, especially I think right now a lot of people, every time we go through election, I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of hope in our government, and what's going to happen, and changes that could be made, or changes that probably won't be made, things like that. But this gives a lot of hope and reminds us that it's not going to be perfect, no matter, if who we vote for wins or not. It's not going to be perfect here, but it's encouraging to me to always remember that it will be perfect one day, and that's going to be eternity. This is a short time, but eternity we get perfection, and that's cool.
Yeah, so we can every human government is going to have corruption of some kind, and it may not be the same corruption each time, but there's going to be some kind of corruption because the darkness lives in our hearts. Until as long as we're still in our flesh, any human leader, no matter how great, is going to have difficulty, going to have problems. And it seems like the higher the office, the more temptation there is, So it's exciting to think about incorruptible leadership, incorruptible shepherds to lead the people. That's really an amazing thing. Let's see what else we got, just for the fun of it. That will live in the land that, why don't you read? Why am I reading? You read.
They will live in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, where your fathers lived. They will live in it forever with their children and grandchildren, and my servant David will be their prince forever.
Now, something occurred to me this week as I was thinking about this verse. At the end of Revelation, there's some debate and some discussion when God remakes the new heaven and the new earth. There's kind of this debate on is that the same earth that's just been fixed up? Is that a completely different planet? Is it a different planet in a different part of the galaxy or the universe, or is it a completely different universe? And I don't know, but it's interesting to me that it tells us that God's people will live in the land that's promised to them forever. So there's got to be some continuity here. So if it's a completely new world that's been remade, which I kind of think it will be, this is still a feature that's part of it, Israel. And we know that the new Jerusalem will be there, but this seems more than just Jerusalem, because he's talking about the land in general, and it's the land that I gave to my servant Jacob. And so here's what I was wondering is, like, let's say you got a new planet and you're going to move your people to this new planet, but you're like, but I promised Jacob, and he's still here, because he'll be resurrected, he'll be there, and all of his descendants, I promised him this chunk of land. So what if he takes Israel and kind of sets it on this
moving houses,
new
but
planet?
have you heard of moving?
It's the same dirt, baby. I mean, you got man. I don't know how it'll work, but it is interesting to me. There's continuity here. The same land, they'll live in that land forever. He doesn't say that land will be on the same planet, but I don't know. There's probably a more creative way to deal with that. But there's some debate on, like, is it a new planet? Is it whatever it is? They've got that land forever. That is their promise that they'll have that land forever. So I don't know. I think there's some interesting implications. Cool. Any ideas on that? Thoughts on that?
No, that's cool. Sorry, I don't have anything else to add.
I'm not apologize. Oh, Daniel. I really like Daniel. Daniel. Okay, so a lot of the prophets seem to be radio prophets, but Daniel is an AV prophet, audiovisual. His prophecies, what I mean is, a lot of the other prophets seem to receive a voice.
Yeah.
Some of them receive visions, but a lot of them, they seem to be hearing the voice. Thus says the Lord. Daniel gets it in full color. I mean, like, he gets visions. Sometimes he's interpreting someone else's vision, like Nebuchadnezzar. But he sees the whole thing, he sees the vision, he hears the voice and everything. So Daniel's got some interesting ones that I really like. Why don't you read that one?
In the days of those kings, the God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and this kingdom will not be left to another people. So in the days of those kings, this is in that, you probably remember it, this is in that vision that Nebuchadnezzar had, and it was the big statue. If I'm remembering right, it's a golden head, and then was it bronze body, iron legs, and then iron and clay feet. I may be getting the substances wrong, but it's something like that. And so basically it's different kingdoms. You've got the Babylonian kingdom, and then you've got the Medo-Persians, and then you've got the Greeks.
You got the Romans, maybe anyway. And so, but what he's saying is at the end of all that, because we're talking about like after all that, in the days of those kings, the God of the heavens will set up a kingdom. So it's a kingdom. And here's what's interesting to me. A lot of people are like, oh, the kingdom is like, it's like a metaphor. But you would need to tell the person who's getting this vision that I just talked about the Medo-Persians, the Romans, the Greeks, and what did I leave out? The Babylonians. Oh, and then God's going to set up a kingdom. You'd have to tell them that that's a metaphor because we're talking about literal on the earth kingdoms, you know? If I told you, let's talk about these 5 actual things and then this 6th thing or 5th thing or whatever it is, and then we've just gone into metaphorical land, I need to tell you that. So, but he doesn't. He just says God will set up a kingdom of the heavens, or God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. And then he talks about how this kingdom will belong to the people. And so it won't be left to another people, meaning it will belong to the Jews. This is, stop talking about Israel. All right, why don't you read this one?
It will crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, but will itself endure forever. I continued watching in the night visions, and suddenly one like a son of man was coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was escorted before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that those of every people, nation, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting.
Now, to this point, we've talked a lot about Israel, but this kind of tells us about what the rest of the world's going to be doing. Okay, so in Israel, what we know so far is like King of Kings, Jesus, in Jerusalem, ruling. Under him will be David ruling, as a, I don't know what you'd call it, a regent or a governor. 12 tribes of Israel being judged by the apostles, so on and so forth. So that's Israel, and you might say, well, what about the rest of us? Well, this tells us what's going on with the rest of us, so that those of every people, nation, and language should serve him. So what we have is like, first of all, we learn that in the kingdom of heaven, the world will still be divided into nations. It's interesting. It also talks about languages. So there will be languages. And where you have nations and languages, you have culture. It doesn't say culture. I pointed as if it had culture. The word culture is not there, but what that says to me is the world's going to be interesting. It's going to have nations and different languages. There will be culture. I mean, probably every nation will have certain ways that they, worship and sing and do different things. And so, a lot of times we think of heaven as like this homogeneous place where everything's the same. It's all white for some reason. I like green personally, but, white's a nice color too, I guess. Is white a color? I don't think it's a color. It's not a color. But, I'm sure there's something in heaven will be white. But anyway, the point is, the world will be very interesting and textured. When we went to India a number of years ago, we went during some festival. You remember that? There was. I remember it being kind of colorful. Lots of colors were pulled out. I don't remember the specifics, so this is not a very good story. But I do remember them setting fires in the streets.
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, when I smell smoke, I think of India, which for some reason they would set these bonfires in the middle of the streets. It's some festival, and there's some festivals in India where they throw colors around and stuff like that. And I don't remember why I'm talking about that. Oh, just culture.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Why wouldn't they still set fires in the streets and do interesting colors in India if that's how they wanted to worship the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? And his dominion is an everlasting dominion. That was kind of funny division. His dominion is everlasting.
So I was thinking there's no period there, but
that will not pass away. And his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. So it'll last forever. By the way, we looked at chapter 2, Daniel, and 7. I kind of put them together because they, it's kind of talking about the same thing. But anyway, get the idea. So I like Daniel. Daniel's fun. All right, Micah. Do you know any Micahs?
I know Micah.
We just had a Micah in the studio a moment ago. Micah is, why don't you tell them who Micah is?
My big brother.
You know Micah.
Not the same one.
Micah is going to work on a audio book for us soon, so we're excited about that. But that's another story for another day. So Micah has kind of an interesting... Did I say we weren't going to go through all these verses?
Yeah, but we all knew we were.
It's kind of starting to feel like we might.
Once you start, you can't stop usually.
I just get going.
Would you like me to read this one?
Yeah, let me get out of the way.
In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be established at the top of the mountains and will be raised up above the hills. Peoples will stream to it.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
And many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us about his ways, so we may walk in his paths." For instruction will go out of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Now, I want to just tell you about a rule that I follow when I'm reading the Old Testament. If I'm trying to figure out if a passage is about the future kingdom, basically the easiest question to ask is, has this happened yet? And here's what we see. We see some things that have not happened yet. Here is an example: the mountain of the Lord's house, which I'm not sure which mountain. I think maybe I said this morning that it was Mount Moriah, which I believe is what the Temple Mount is called. But then later in this verse, it talks about Zion, so maybe it means more that generally Zion. Don't know, but anyway, the mount that is the center point of Jerusalem, where the temple is, will also, by the way, be the center point of the world because it'll be raised up. And I don't know if that literally means raised up high. It might, but it could also mean kind of metaphorically, it is the most important place on the planet. So in the future kingdom, all that's going to happen, and it will be raised up above the hills. Peoples will stream to it. So has this happened? Well, not really. I mean, in some ways, people do go to Jerusalem, but here it says, peoples will stream to it, and many nations will come and say, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us about his ways so we may walk in his paths. This ain't happening today. I mean, people do go and they learn things and, see the sights. But this is something that has not happened in history. I mean, there might be small pockets of people that come in and, visit, but this is talking about a future point where the Lord will actually be there and he'll be teaching, maybe not so different from when he was teaching in the temple in the Gospels. I don't know what it'll look like, but people will come from all over to soak that up and then take home what they learn. And then for instruction will go out of Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So this could mean either that people come, hear him, and then take that teaching back home, which I tend to think that's probably very likely, but it also could very well mean that it's being broadcast in some kind of format. Maybe Jesus will live stream. I mean, I really don't. I mean, he could.
In the clouds.
In the clouds, maybe. I don't know. So anyway, really interesting to think about this world that's so different, where people from all nations will want to come to Jerusalem. They'll want to learn from the King of Kings. They'll probably want to hear David sing. All of these types of things are going to be going on. It's very practical. It's very real. It's something we can actually wrap our minds around when we start reading what the Bible has to say about the kingdom of heaven.
He will settle disputes among many peoples and provide arbitration for strong nations that are far away. They will beat their swords into plows and their spears into pruning knives. Nation will not take up the sword against nation, and they will never again train for war.
Sounds like a pretty nice place to be. But read this, it's even better.
But each person will sit under his grapevine and under his fig tree with no one to frighten him, for the mouth of the Lord of armies has spoken.
So my father-in-law John has got let's see, do you have a fig tree, John? Yeah, he's got a nice fig tree. And I've never seen John just sit out under that fig tree all day long. Because we got to be busy, right? We got work to do. We got so many things. We got to, in the time this was being written, you would have to defend your farm sometimes from bandits or robbers or whatever. What this is saying is, there's not going to be need to train soldiers or to do military exercises. None of that. In fact, we will be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And yes, by the way, we will labor. We will have important work to do, or the people of the earth will have important work to do. But we'll also be able to finally rest, where we don't always have to have that fear and discouragement that comes from the tumultuous world that we live in. So pretty amazing pretty amazing verses. Let me make sure there wasn't anything else I wanted to say, because we don't want to miss anything that I want to say. Oh, this is a really interesting one to me. He will settle disputes among many peoples and provide arbitration for strong nations. Now, what's interesting to me about that is we often think of the future kingdom of heaven as a time where nobody disagrees, where everybody agrees and gets along. And I think generally that is true. Now, we're talking about the millennial kingdom here. And so what's interesting to me is it seems like there might be some disagreements between nations, but it doesn't come to war. I mean, there's maybe some disagreements, but notice he provides arbitration, and then notice it goes into, and it says that they're strong nations, which is interesting, and then it goes into the fact that they don't need to go to war. Because when two strong nations disagree about something, they often send their young men to go fight it out on the battlefield. That doesn't happen here. And so even if there's a disagreement in the millennial kingdom between nations, which I don't know, it's hard to imagine how that would happen, but maybe it does. He handles it. He can arbitrate it in peace, and I find that really interesting. And I think it also adds a lot of texture to the kingdom to me, because a lot of times the interest in stories and in what happens in the world kind of comes down to the sort of conflicts we have and the way that we have to overcome hurdles and challenges and disagreements. So that's a really interesting point in that scripture. And then our last one, which is from Habakkuk. And this one's really short. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
You want to see how fast you can read it? No, that'd be weird, but
Okay.
here's what it says.
For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord's glory as the water covers the sea.
I think, personally, a world that's full of God, the knowledge of God, would be a pretty special place to live. I sometimes I put that into my prayer time, is, because we're told to pray for thy kingdom come. I don't know why it's in King James Version. Why is it thy kingdom come? I know the word your. I could use that one, but thy kingdom come. And sometimes alongside of that, I'll pray about, like, I'm looking forward to the day when everybody's on the same team, where we all get it. We're all together. We can all talk. You could walk up to an absolute stranger and have a conversation about the Lord, and you may know something they don't know. They may know something you don't know, but you both agree He's good. He's our King. So really exciting to think about that. So here's how that how does that relate to Christmas? How does that relate to Christmas? Why don't you answer that question?
I think it relates in a big way in that so many times people think that the Christmas story is just Jesus' birth and then the end. But that was, phase whatever number of the plan.
It was the beginning of the gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in our question time this morning, you can go and watch this, but in our question time this morning at the end of the sermon, one person asked, why is it that Jewish people don't believe in the Messiah, in Jesus as the Messiah? And we actually have a young man who's Jewish, who doesn't identify as a Christian, who comes to church. And so I was a little worried about answering that question in front of him. I had an urge to say, hey, would you like to answer this? But I didn't want to put him on the spot. But I talked to him afterward, just kind of like, was that answer okay? And he said, yeah, that was pretty good. So my answer was that in Scripture, when the Messiah is talked about, he's almost all in the Old Testament, he's almost always talked about alongside kingdom, alongside the fact that he will usher in a change in the world, and that there will be this kingdom. And so if you were to ask a Jewish person, why don't you believe in Jesus? Generally, the answer is going to be something to the effect of, well, clearly he couldn't have been Messiah because the kingdom hasn't arrived. That these things that we see in the prophets have not yet happened. And so one of the descriptions that happens with prophecy is there's an analogy that is sometimes used, and it's about mountain peaks. And the idea is that when a prophet is looking at events in the future, they see the events, but they don't necessarily know how far apart those events are. Sort of like if you're looking at a mountain range like this, let's see, what camera am I on? Yeah, if you're looking at a mountain range like this, you don't really know how far apart those peaks are because you can't see the valley between. You know, and so a prophet is looking at these events like mountain peaks from one vantage point, and he doesn't know that, okay, there's 2,000 years between those two events and then another 1,000 years between those events. All he sees is this sort of superimposed flat image. This is a metaphor, but he kind of sees this flat image where he just sees, okay, Messiah arrives, there's kingdom, and then there's happiness and grapevines and fig trees, you know, and they don't necessarily see, the prophet wouldn't necessarily know what is the timeline here. And so you can understand how someone would look at those Old Testament prophecies and then look at Jesus and say, well, you know, he fulfilled some of what it says about the Messiah, but there's still more to fulfill. And here's the thing, Christians agree. Believers say, yes, there is still more to fulfill, and we're waiting. But he gave us ample evidence to prove that he is the Messiah by doing miracles and fulfilling a great host of prophecies about the coming of Christ. So, the great Christmas present is obviously Jesus, but also the part that's still on its way is the kingdom. So
Look, we have some comments.
oh, thank you, John. John got us some technology working here, and we're going to quietly stare
I'm
at them.
gonna
How about
just gonna try
I
and
sing
catch
a
up.
song while we do it? Okay, so while she's looking through that, let me talk about our Christmas program idea. If you we wanted some interaction from you guys. Here's my thought. You may have said some of this, but here's my thought on it. That Christmas looks different this year, of course, and I would love to get some feedback from you guys. Maybe shoot a video on your phone just about like what are you guys doing for Christmas, and if we can get it in time, we can play. And provided you don't use profanity or anything, we could actually play it, and we can kind of. Well, they probably won't, but I'm just saying.
Then if you do take it, don't video it like this. Video it like
Yeah.
this.
This is called.
Otherwise, there'll be black bars on either side of
so
you.
we tell the people this. This is wrong. This is right. So this is called landscape. So anyway, so let us know what your Christmas is. You think your Christmas is going to look like, things that are different, but maybe a little bit about how God is still showing Himself in your life through all of this. So you sort of paused. Have you found some comments that are?
Everyone's real excited.
About?
These verses just get them excited.
They do, yeah.
Haley wrote an article for Free Grace Women that's going to be coming up, going to be posted this week. But some of what she talks about in there, the hope of the future, I feel like relates to tonight. So look out for that on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, that's good.
She said those verses in Micah give me chills. I can't wait for the kingdom.
I'm trying to think. You know, you guys. I haven't actually looked at it yet, but the video this morning has some questions that people asked, and so it was an interesting discussion time. It actually was the first time that in our discussion time at Shreveport Bible Church that I think it was all questions. They all had questions about the kingdom. Sometimes when we do a discussion time at the end, it's just kind of like, you know, what stood out to you? This is what, but it was all like, you know, what does this mean? What do you think about this? And so I actually think that's part of the beauty of what we have about the kingdom is there's so much mystery still left that it's really exciting to kind of daydream about it, you know, and I kind of find myself doing that a fair amount. So I'm with you on that.
Kelly messaged me earlier today that she finished listening to, I guess you posted the audio for
a few chapters,
for the sake of the King. And anyway, so if you haven't listened to those, that's the book that Micah will be recording, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have a full audio book later. But a lot of these verses, I can tell you took inspiration from.
Well, yeah, so I've just kind of been synthesizing. Maybe we should talk about what we're talking about.
Yeah, tell them what they were
Where's my
talking
bookshelf
about.
in here? Oh, we took the bookshelf out. I don't have my books. They're actually over there. Yeah, can you grab one? So we got a new book that's coming out. It's a fiction book. We talked about it a little bit, but I don't remember if we talked about it here. It's a fiction book called For the Sake of the King, and it's a story that takes place in the millennial kingdom. And so for me, it's just kind of been like,
I don't know how to do Vanna White.
yeah, this is, yes, there it is. It's just been kind of like trying to soak up these verses and then think about like what kind of challenges could a character face in this sort of world. And the difficulties, and people will say this when I tell them what I'm trying to do with this book, they say, well, who's the bad guy?
Yeah.
You know,
Where's the conflict?
Yeah, Satan is locked away. Well, I think we found some interesting, challenges in it, because I think people will still face some of the kind of I'll call them growth challenges. I mean, there's things that I think will face or people of the kingdom will face that will allow them to grow. So,
well, in the verse we read about his word, his teaching coming out of Mount Zion.
yeah.
That means we still need to learn things,
Still
apparently.
learning, yeah.
We need to
Absolutely.
hear teaching and a lot of
Well,
times.
and also, so some of these, we've retained our background. Yeah, so some of these kind of allude to this idea of disputes among many peoples and arbitration. And then there's this I think we looked at it in last week's sermon, although the live stream cut off last week, so sorry about that if you were watching it. But you didn't need to read those last
It's a month
verses.
of technical difficulties around here.
Yeah, but we were in Zechariah? I think Zechariah, maybe 14, has this description of the fact that if any nation doesn't come up to celebrate the Feast of Booths, then the Lord will withhold rain on their nation. So that says, well, okay, it's possible to have some rebellion in the millennial kingdom, So to me, there's some conflict, So anyway, it's not that we want there to be necessarily conflict in the millennial kingdom, but for storytelling, it's hard to tell a story if there's no conflict, So that's really kind of what we were searching for, and I think we found it with this book. So anyway, we're excited about that. We'll talk more about that at a later point. But any other things? It looks like they're just having a good old time. Well, thanks for being with us. What time is it? 10% power. Oh, there it goes. My watch is about to die too.
Early.
5:41.
We didn't do music tonight. We didn't do a kids thing tonight, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Of a
Well,
night.
I guess one of the things I'd like to know from you guys is, do you like? Because basically what we did is we did a sermon this morning, but then we just kind of chatted about this. I didn't really notify anybody that's what we're gonna do. But if you guys like this format, we could probably make it even more interactive by, for instance, having your comments on our normal screen, and maybe even one idea is maybe even having somebody Skype in, or where we could actually have some conversations with people that are not in the room, which would be exciting. So if you like it, if you hate it, whatever, let us know, and we'll think about it. But I kind of like it. It's nice and simple. And sorry for being a little flustered when we got started. We were just running behind.
Yeah, it's been raining here all day, and so.
And I got back late from church.
I got back
But
real
I
late.
didn't.
So.
I told everybody I kind of overate last week. I had one less taquito, and it was okay today. I didn't overeat, I think. So I'm not losing weight, but I'm just saying I don't feel like a
Good job.
fat cow like I did last week, man. Ugh, anyway, all right. Well, I guess that's all. Why don't we didn't pray last week?
Yeah.
Well, I think we
let's
talked
pray.
about prayer and then we didn't pray. Was that last week that we talked about prayer?
Yeah, that was a fail.
Oh, we talked about prayer for like 40 minutes. See ya.
See you later.
See ya. Okay, well, I'll pray for us. Father, thank you for your word and the excitement that these kind of verses bring about. And Lord, I just pray that you'd help us to continue to grow and continue to be excited about what's in your word. I pray you'd help us to be excited about our development, our maturity in you. And I pray that we'd be able to share that hope. We're in a strange time, Lord, but I pray that you would allow us to redeem the time and make use of everything that you've given us to share your message of grace with those that need it. In your name, amen. All right, we love you guys, and we will see you sometime in the near future.